Hey players, it's me Josh and I'm here with Red Romina, and today we want to talk to you guys about long distance relationships, what you can do to have a good long distance relationship, how to make it successful, and share some tips on how to kind of improve your long distance relationship. She's a travel vlogger, so she's got a lot of experience, a lot of advice to give to you guys.
This is the Josh Speaks, you're watching the Josh Speak.
Okay, so a lot of you guys have asked me questions about how should I go into a long-distance relationship? Does it make sense to start one if you've never met in person? What would you say to someone who's asking about that, starting an online relationship?
So there's actually, there's two sides to having a long-distance relationship. One of them is you know each other, you're dating, and then somehow you are separated either by school or work or just anything. You just have to move to the opposite sides of the city. That also counts as a long-distance relationship. Yeah. And the other half of it is when you meet somebody online and you find that you have this chemistry with a person, but you aren't able to meet in person yet, should you start a relationship with them? My personal answer for starting a relationship with someone that you don't know in person is no. And that's kind of just a direct answer that I have. I did have a friend who she was dating someone who was in England and she was living in the United States, and they had never met in person, and they actually dated for like 3 years. And at that point, like, I did not really comprehend how a relationship like that could work. Yeah. But I mean, it did work for them for a few years, but obviously since there was no end to it, like there was no way for them to meet up together because they just didn't have the funds to travel to the other country. They just eventually had to end the relationship because of that. Yeah. So that's the reason why I'm kind of against it. But at the same time, if it's somebody that you have chemistry with and they're helping you grow and become a better person, then I also don't see it as a bad side. But personally, I would prefer not to jump into a relationship like that.
With relationships, there's multiple components. There's like this emotional component, but there's also a physical component too. Right. And I think that is an important part of it. So it's like, if that piece is missing from the equation, you know, I feel like you can only develop so much with a person through talking online or video chatting, things like that. I feel having some level of the physical component really solidifies and makes you feel more committed to that relationship.
Yeah, that's actually also another aspect of it. For me, like, the physical aspect is super important. Like, just being able to hold hands and like just to feel the energy that's like in the room when you are with the person, even on like the friendship level, that's like super important to me. So I guess that's why I'm kind of like opposed to that idea. Yeah. But at the same time, like I said before, if they're helping you grow as a person and that's something that you kind of need, then I feel like that it's okay to jump into it as long as you know there is going to be an end to it either way. Right.
Would you say then that it makes sense to have that become a relationship or just a strong friendship?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that goes into like, should this be like a friends with benefits type of thing? Or the only thing about that is that just remember that if you are jumping into a relationship like that, that's more than like a strong friendship. You are investing in that person emotionally. And it is difficult to disconnect yourself from that and allow yourself to attach to other people that you know in like your everyday life, like physically. Yeah. It's just a little bit difficult to open up because you're already attached to this person emotionally.
So I think another aspect to being in a relationship is kind of being exclusive with one another, you know? So if you are long distance, whether it's being in another city, another state, another country, there's almost kind of like this pact that you guys share where, you know, you decide to be exclusive. And I think it's kind of hard to actually verify and maintain that. It really is just on the honor system, you know? Like, you don't know what this person is doing hundreds of miles away. They could be doing anything when they're not talking to you. Yeah. So do you think it makes sense to maintain a sense of exclusivity if you are in that long distance setting?
I guess the thing about that is that you are allowing a part of you to be exposed and vulnerable, and it's possible to get hurt by that. Because like you said, I mean, people are one way when they're talking to you, and then they could be a totally different way when they're not talking to you. You just kind of have to prepare yourself and become a strong person to be able to trust somebody in that way. to trust them like wholeheartedly that they are being truthful to you. And you just have to become a strong person and be prepared in the case that they aren't who they say that they are.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people, those feelings of jealousy and insecurity start to just creep into your mind when you aren't with the person or you aren't talking to them. You might be thinking, okay, well, I'm staying in tonight, but they may be going out with friends. Anything can happen, and I would have no knowledge of it at all. So it's like balancing and just coming to terms with any kind of feelings of jealousy that might arise. Like, what do you think is a good way to kind of manage that?
That really depends from person to person.
Yeah. What would you say about things like checking in constantly, or like, are those healthy things to do, or is there a better way?
So that actually, I mean, that kind of goes in hand with technology. So technology helps us to communicate and get closer to people, but at the same time, it helps us to distance ourselves from people, I feel like. Because are we supposed to be on the clock all of the time, checking in with people? Like, should we be dependent upon what other people are doing constantly? I mean, if you go like 30 years back, your boyfriend or your mom, whoever you're living with would go off to work, and they would go be in work, and it's not like they're calling or texting you during work. But now we have that accessibility. They're either posting on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram. If they're not texting you or sending you an email, like even through their lunch break, they're contacting you. So are we becoming dependent on that? I feel like we are. So dating during this age, I feel like it just kind of comes with it.
Yeah, the expectations are just built into...
Exactly. And I feel like, I mean, it just depends on the type of person that you are and the kind of relationship that you are looking for. Like the type of person that you want to be with. If you guys have a mutual agreement to live your life sort of disconnected from each other and not be checking in constantly, then that's okay. But you just have to realize that the person that you're dating is into the same thing that you are, you know? Because that's where the jealousy part will come in. Because if you are a person who is expecting your partner to check in on you all the time, because that's how we are now, living and dating in this modern age, but your significant other is not like that. Yeah. That will make it difficult. That's where the jealousy comes in, and like the trust and all of that stuff. But if you're the type of person who just doesn't need that kind of validation every couple hours, then you should probably find someone who is like that as well.
If you are one way and your partner's the other way, you have to kind of compromise a bit, you know? So if you're someone who's like, go off, do whatever, I don't care, I'm not jealous, but your partner isn't like that and they need to hear from you every so often, find a happy middle ground. I actually think
that's the best scenario, because you have the best of both worlds and they're mixing together, and if they're able to compromise, then you have a really solid relationship because you're helping each other grow and step out of your comfort zones and just become a more rounded and developed person.
So sometimes though, relationships do come to an end, and sometimes they need to come to an end when you are in a long distance scenario and you guys just aren't connecting as much. It's very easy sometimes when you are separate to kind of start to grow in your own way in your new environments, whether it's you make new friends in that area or you start developing crushes on other people. It's kind of hard to maintain that old world kind of setting because you're not in it anymore. So when do you think it makes sense to kind of say, listen, we are kind of going in different directions, let's end it?
I think that's something that's like, you can't really put like a timestamp on it or like an expiration date on it. It's definitely something that's based off of intuition and feeling. But I will say that if you are considering going into a long distance relationship, then you should definitely from the beginning start thinking about how it's going to end. And by ending, I don't necessarily mean like end the relationship, but I mean ending the long distance phase of the relationship. So I think it's definitely important to, like if you're jumping into a relationship and like somebody is going off to college, then you'll know more or less like, okay, they're going to be gone for 6 months, and then they'll come back after the end of the semester. Or if you're with somebody and they are going somewhere like to another city because of a better work opportunity, maybe it'll only last a year. But if it's going to last longer, or if it doesn't have, an end date, then I think it's important to talk about that.
Yeah.
Not only with your significant other, but with yourself, and like be honest with yourself. And I think that's the hardest part about it, because like I said earlier, you get emotionally attached.
Yeah.
And when this person becomes a part of your life and suddenly they have to be somewhere else, and we're just talking about a relationship, like you're already in a relationship and you have to get separated physically, then it becomes harder to realize that there has to be an end to it one way or another. Either you split up and you go your separate ways, or you have to move and go to a city together, or like you have to move to where they are, or they have to move to where you are. There has to be a timeline for it. And I think that's something that you definitely have to think about when you start diving into a long distance relationship.
So since you're a travel vlogger and you travel all over the world and visit all these cool places and stuff, what's your mindset, I guess, going into a relationship now? Like, would you be able to manage a long distance relationship if you have to like travel and live somewhere or work somewhere, and your partner has to stay wherever they are?
See, that would be really difficult to do. And I feel like, because travel is technically my job, I have to do it.
Yeah.
And I would either need somebody who is okay with me leaving and doing this and like doing my own thing, or I would need someone who is able to do it as well.
Yeah.
And that's just from experience and from not wanting to jump into a long distance relationship again, because I just don't think that it's very healthy to maintain it for a very long time.
Yeah.
And also part of travel is experience. And it's experiences that I want to share with friends, with family, with, significant others. So it's definitely something that I want to share with people.
Yeah.
So having somebody who's there and able to do it alongside with me is really important.
What do you guys think, though? Are you currently in a long-distance relationship, or is it something you're thinking about pursuing with someone that maybe is moving away or having to go off to college or something like that? If you do, leave your comments below. Also, go check out the video we did over on Romina's channel. We did the Whisper Challenge, and we did a bunch of tongue twisters. It was pretty crazy. You can go see who won the Whisper Challenge over on her channel. I'll link the video up too, and like I said, guys, I'm going to be putting out tons of cool stuff for you this summer, so make sure to check out what I have planned.
And subscribe.
And subscribe, definitely. Subscribe to her channel, too. As always, guys, love and peace.